of defense reforms. In a world today which is defined by rapid geopolitical shifts and technological disruption, India today stands at a critical juncture where it is reimagining its strategic posture, it is redefining its priorities, and reforming its defense apparatus to meet the demands of today and tomorrow. And to break that down, we have with us in conversation a distinguished military leader and strategic thinker, Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, Param Vishishta Seva Medal, Yuddha Seva Medal, Sena Medal, AED Corps, retired, currently also the Honorable Member of the UPSC, who is known for his incisive perspectives and deep operational insights. Joining him is someone who needs no introduction in the world of defense journalism, Mr. Sandeep Unnithan, a seasoned journalist and an author who has been long at the forefront of India's national security discourse. With that, I now hand over the proceedings to Mr. Sandeep Unnithan, who will lead us into an engaging fireside chat.
Better at the mics than you.
It's good to be back in conversation with you, General Shukla. When we talk about civil-military fusion, we always talk about civil-military fusion. I think you're the best example of civil-military fusion because of the role that you have as member UPSC. It's a classic case of military steel being used to look for the raw material that will go into the steel frame of India. So I think that's a very good example of civil-military fusion. I was just remembering the last time that we were in conversation, General Shukla, if you remember, it was 4 years ago. It was peak COVID and we were socially distant. We were drones, very interestingly. And you had a lot of things to say about how the artillery needs to relook at drones in the way that it was all about ordnance on target. We were talking about Nagorno-Karabakh and the attack on the Aramco refineries and all that. That was 4 years ago. Tell us where we are today when it comes to drone warfare, because that's the in thing now, right? With Russia, Ukraine, and to a lesser extent with the Houthis and Israel and Hamas. How significant has this revolution in military affairs been in the last 4 years since we spoke?
So I'll tell you what's happening in Ukraine, my understanding of Ukraine. I think dronery has emerged as a new science, as a separate arm.
Dronery.
Dronery. So let me see, and it's the Ukrainians have discovered dronery on the run. So today, 80% of Russian casualties, men and equipment, come not from the infantry, not from the armor, not from the artillery. We have to eat humble pie. It's coming from drones. See what they are doing. So the Ukrainians have drawn a 20-kilometer zone, 15 kilometers, I think 10 kilometers surveillance and 10 kilometers hit zone. So they pick up, they have so, what should I say, pulverized the whole battle space with drones that you pick up anything that moves and then kill it in the killing zone. These drones are going through your trenches, they are going through your turrets of your tanks, and they are being used as strategic air power. I mean, look at this here, this is the most significant thing. I mean, a country without a navy, they have used those Starlings, crew drones, and pushed the iconic Black Sea Fleet out of Sevastopol. I'd love to be contested on this. The Russian air power is absent. Ukrainians hardly have any air power. I mean, those F-16s can't be piloted. What has emerged as close air support is drones. It's as significant as that.
Is this RMA 2.0?
The Russians, the Americans are struggling with what the Houthis are doing with their drones. So dronery, and it's not drone now, it's drones, missiles, and very sophisticated deterrence built into this drone missile force. And what should really worry us, unless it is social media fluff, that the Chinese have the most sophisticated instrument of long-range positions. Their J-36 is going to be led by a CAS, which is nothing but a swarm of million drones. So they are talking of swarming million drones, scaling it up. So I think drones is just one of the technologies. I think Marshal Chaudhary said this in the beginning. I'm quoting to you Mark Milley now. He says the changes in the character of war in Ukraine have been the most profound in recorded history. I mean, so you run out of superlatives to describe the way the battle is.
Absolutely. I mean, when you say dronery itself, that's a take home for me. That it's like archery. Dronery is now
evolving. My understanding, and what I would like to say is that this is the time these debates should deepen. So I'll make some points, and if there are any contrary views, they must come up now and beyond. Because what we need, I think, most in our reforms today, I think are three things. And this is the year of reforms, splendid opportunity. One is high quality ideation. I think the relationship, and Mr. Jaishankar made this point at the release of India's World. He said track 2 is not challenging track 1 enough. Similarly, in our case, the relationship between the critiques and those in the establishment is far too cozy. It's far too cozy. We must challenge enough for things to emerge. Secondly, now, today over the years, the strategic commentary in volume is not less. What we need to pick out of it is clarity. Somebody said that Vidya is not knowledge, it's clarity. What do we need to do? So ideation in quality, clarity, and action. We need to take action.
Action. We just heard Mr. Pankaj Saran talk about how we are literally in the silver jubilee of the reforms that were suggested by the Kargil Review Committee. Not all of them have been implemented. It's been 2 decades in the making. And I must tell you this, I moved from Mumbai to Delhi 20 years ago. I have seen more change in the Defense Ministry happen in the last 5 years than I have in the preceding 15 years. But the world outside, like you mentioned, has changed 20 times more in the last 5 years than it has in the previous 20 years. So these points that you mentioned, is there a sense that it is now a house on fire for us? I'll give you a small example. When you talk about drones, for instance, the Indian Army just ordered 100 FPV drones. 100. For me, that sounds like the artillery ordering 100 artillery shells. The Chinese are building the drones in millions, like you mentioned, and the Russians are building them in millions as well. And of course, the Ukrainians. Is there a sense that it is a house on fire for us, these defense reforms? It's not enough to just say, it's 2025 is the year of reforms. Like again, what Mr. Saran said, every year needs to be a year of reform from now on, because we have passed that moment of, that peace and tranquility. Now it's literally crisis.
So just let me echo what Mr. Saran said. It is also my view that what started around 2014, 2016 with the establishment of the CDS, DMA, Atmanirbharta and Defense, we began the boldest, most far-reaching reforms in national security since independence. That's my view. Having said that, I mean, whatever the political motivations behind declaring this as the year of reforms, hopefully is this, that while we have done a lot, the China challenge has grown so enormously, and the changes in the character of war have been so profound, that unless we broaden, deepen, and accelerate our reforms, we will be, hit grievously. And let me tell you, it's what the world is doing, and therefore how the character of reforms need to change. You see this business of reforming DPP, tinkering with some financial regulation, to put it ever so bluntly, is useless. What needs to be done are the following. We need to decide how to create this modern, calibrated, technologically enabled, agile, fleet-footed instrument of deterrence and warfighting. When Mark Milley was rolling out excuses for what happened in Ukraine in a congressional hearing, one young senator asked him, General, you are not the chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff to dole out excuses. Don't tell us why Putin attacked. Tell us why deterrence failed. Our generals are going to be asked these questions, everybody. And I can sense this in the environment. The people are not as unforgiving as they were in the past. So we really have, this is real stuff. That's the first point. Just one or two points I would just like to make. And therefore, these reforms are of use only if they are carried to the fleets and formations. It's 10 years now. These reforms are not for seminars like this. They are to be carried to the soldier, sailor, airman in the field. That's the way these reforms have to happen. And the last point, may I just put it this way. 62, we send our soldiers to battle ill-clothed and ill-equipped. Kargil, General Malik said, we will fight with what we have. Now when we are the 5th largest economy, we are the 3rd largest economy soon to be. Asian Power Index says we are the 3rd or 4th most powerful country in the world. We must step up our game in national security. Those lazy excuses have to go. That's the whole point. There has to be delivery, and people have to be held to account for non-delivery.
Absolutely.
This is the point. Is it not time, Sandeep, to tell our people, our soldiers, sailors, and they're brave people, that we will send you to battle with the technologies and capacities that you need to win. And this is not an emotional point. This is what we owe to them. It's a sacred kind of covenant. And see what is being done. Just last week, amidst all this tariff business, 2 things. I mean, people say don't copy the American military, don't copy the Chinese military, all right, do it yourself. Or we'll be forced to give examples. So Trump may be a maverick, but look at the thing he has done. One of his famous executive orders is this, defense reformation. And I pull out 4 points from that. He's given the Secretary of Defense 60 days for root and branch reform and procurement. Submit a plan to maximize speeds and minimize red tape to include financial regulations. So if GFR and all this is such an obstacle, it just needs to go. It just needs to go. The time has come to raise this. First preference to commercial solutions. Prioritize private sector and startups over the government things because they're not delivering. We need to say the same things in our case. Look how real it is. Point 3, eliminate DoD acquisition regulations of duplicative, wasteful, slow processes or virtual dodge in the MOD. Make a training program for the bureaucrats, civil military in the DoD, and thereafter, after 60 days, they will be judged on the following performance metrics: speed of clearance, commercial buying, ability to take calculated risks. Now, this is common sense to me. Now, if we prove it's fantasy in our case, fine. Just one more example. Action, I say. And look at, we've been talking of AI. 2 weeks back, Pete Hegseth signs an order. What is that order he signs? Eurocom, IPACOM. Go check it on the net. 2 commands. So no fluff now. 2 commands. What do you need? You need LLMs, Microsoft. All those oppositions which came, software can't be bought. 1 line, he's taken them off. And make the chairman sign, and he signs. Other excuse, ye nahi ho sakta, you can't give it to vendors. He said it has to be qualitative people. So LLMs, Microsoft, AI agents, and Google. Lay down combat objectives, precision strike, this, that, 1 year. The time has come to do this kind of stuff, and my hunch tells me you do this, there will be no pushback. All these have become excuses, ki bhai humko 10 saal baad kuch hoga. It may have happened there, sorry.
No, you've done incredible reform, as Ambassador Saran mentioned. The
Absolutely.
Ordnance
Time
Factory
has-
Board was dismantled. You set up 7 corporations. That's historic. That kind of
But
reform.
not good enough. See, our Ordnance Factory Board, everything. Look what's happening in Taiwan. They have finally, this is the American military. They have said, we've got all legacy ammunitions. No good, you need precision strike. So they've gone through an elaborate program of quick sync, which is what making all legacy stuff precise. Our ordnance factories are incapable of doing that. So, we need comprehensive reform of all kinds. You begin it. It is very much possible. And let me make one point. I'm being critical just to reform, where we do good stuff. This has become a new tradition. Say, I have problem with DRDO, so there will be a committee. You point out the faults and lob it to PMO. If everything has to go to PMO, what are the rest doing? I mean, these are very senior positions to execute reform. This PMO lobbying just has to end.
Jan Shukla, the United States does not have a superpower on its borders, right? We do. China. Like you mentioned, that deterrence had failed 5 years back when the Chinese landed up in strength, and today we're looking at high altitude deployments, super high altitude deployments of a kind that's never been seen in human history. We have another nuclear armed neighbor to our left. We have these two wonderful countries, one to the west and one to the north, which are in a collusive alliance, and possibly a third front opening up as well in the east. How do you reform in the face of fire like this? How is it possible? You're deploying your soldiers, and at the same time you want me to reform. How is it possible?
So see, I've got an idea on this. Let me just throw it open for wider debate, and these debates should, wide. Let's not talk of how grim a strategic environment is. Pakistan is just not part of China, it's Turkey now. Turkey is a drone superpower. Bangladesh is a new national security reality. It's beyond instability and all that stuff. With Lal Munir Hat, those bases, 80% of the inventory being Chinese. There is a strategic design here. You've seen all that ISI travel. Pakistan, China, and Bangladesh. We are being encircled, so we just have to step up again. Now see what, in my view, what we should do. Two, three things. Along the LAC, we have rebalance. So there are troops, there are reserves, there is enough mech, there is logistics, all that stuff. All that we need to do there is to get some technologies. I'll give you precise technologies. What do you need? You need persistent surveillance with SAR. The IDEX system, 10 years, you have Indian startups. They just need to be given orders. I was an army commander during Galwan. If we had persistent surveillance, Galwan would not have happened. This is the value of technology.
This is something we learned in Kargil. We need persistence.
No, and until now, let me now make one more point, and it should be contested. This, we were talking of 52 satellites. This SBS is a mirage. Unless you are positioned in the LEO space. I mean, look at Elon Musk, 42,000 satellites. They discovered the problems with Starlinks, and the Americans are upgrading to Starshield, which is the military dimension of Starlinks. The Chinese were sleeping, but once they realized this, 14,000 satellites in LEO, planned 7,000 launched. We have none. SPS is a mirage. It gives you very little in the military space. And I've spoken to some of these startups. They tell me that these startups are ready, Dhruv Space and all. They should be given orders as of yesterday. Wow, these are becoming very serious. So persistent surveillance with SAR. Please understand, without Starlink's kind of stuff, you have no positioning, no communications. Tell me, Rakesh, you will not have dronery. You will not have dronery. So this and dronery, accelerating autonomy at declining cost. These 3-4 things, जो startups आपके तैयार हैं, बस आपने orders देने. With this, we get fail-proof deterrence along the LAC, which is what the army tells the wider security establishment that don't worry about the LAC now, and let the wider Sino-Indian relationship blossom. What happens today is that in the absence of when these deterrence breakdowns happen, the whole relationship crumbles. And having said that,
you encourage adventurism.
This is also the time, I mean, Ambassador Saran was making this point, the lag with China is so huge that we have to say Diton. Now what do I mean by Diton? Not peace, but peace to buy time. We need to build capacities in the long term. Let's not sleepwalk into conflict. This is a good enough understanding. And then do a whole lot of other reforms. So I'm saying this is clarity. You either listen to me if you have some better ideas, but this business of doing little bit here, a little bit there, and jingoism rising is the biggest problem. We should not sleepwalk into conflict. So I'm making this precise argument, fail-proof deterrence along the LAC, very much possible. And if you see what's happened in the last 3-4 years, we've talked to Chinese many times. I think, in my view, it's very much possible, and commanders on the ground.
You believe deterrence has been restored along the LAC?
Yes, in a big manner. If you give them these technologies, it will be fail-proof. It will be fail-proof in the grey zone. And all-out conflict for all the reasons that ambassadors. And I'll give you some more reasons. See, look at the Chinese. It cannot happen with larger stuff. Manufacturing capacities. Chinese manufacturing capacities in the civil structure, in the civil space 2002 were half of those of the Americans. By 2022, they become twice. And therefore, the Chinese military-industrial complex is 5 to 6 times more efficient than the Americans by American admission. MAGA knows it. America doesn't have 7 days of missiles and munitions for a Taiwan fight. The Chinese are churning out 10,000 cruise missiles a week. Look at the gap. Steel, 13 times. You know, and 10 of the industries of the future, in 6 they are leading edge innovation.
China is what the United States was in the Second World War.
China has a problem, if the USA has a problem with China, where do we stand? Look at shipbuilding. What, 232 times? But what have they done? Trump has taken shipbuilding right into the White House. They appointed a naval officer. Let's get cracking on all this. We'd have to end A to AD in the IOR. So, broadly that, and here, see, I think we have 3 to 4 issues which need to be done. One is stealth-enabled offensive air power. Now, we leave it to the Air Force, whatever combination you need, but this is becoming existential. The Army cannot fight without a drone missile force. It's not an either-or choice. Both are complementary. One last one is AD. Look what will happen if you don't act. The Israelis took out, I think, out of 4 S-300s, 2 to 3. Iran today knows it's naked. If those B-2 strike, it's going to be humiliating. Look at our AD topology. I think it's severely in deficit. So these 2-3 issues we have to actually consider. And make one last point, Sandeep. See, the choice is for us to act or not to act. And I agree with the Ambassador Saran, status quo is so far. I'm not being naive on this or a babe in the woods. But the issue is, if you don't act, look at the consequences, how brutal geopolitics is.
Oh, it's absolutely.
America today knows it cannot fight the Chinese in the first Iron Strait. What will be the consequences on power projection to American power? Look at how Zelensky was humiliated by Trump. This is if you don't nourish your instruments of hard power. So the consequent geopolitics is extremely brutal. If we keep making these excuses, GFR, there will be severe consequences.
Real politics.
So it's a splendid opportunity, an opportunity to take that national security makeover to the next level. And I think the time has come just to do it. There was a time when the consequences of acting were perhaps not so good. There was a time. I think today, if you act, generally the winds are
favorable.
I think so. That we need to just tap into the moment.
The other point I just want to take off from what you said about the civil-military fusion in the United States. They have Department X, the DIU, and we have to some extent replicated that. All the services have it. The MOD has the IDEX. What more really needs to be done? Is there how do you institutionalize a house on fire approach?
So, there are so many aspects. See, let me tell you now what's going wrong with IDEX. If in IDEX you bring the same procurement procedures for a 6th generation aircraft, what is going to happen to IDEX? Last year, I'm told, the Navy has given 10 orders to startups. Army 1, Air Force 0. How will the startups function? These startups, in the real high cutting edge domains, they are paying engineers 6 crores an annum. So, बेचारे कहाँ से पैसे लाएंगे अगर आपको orders? So, common sense has to come back. The army is doing trials as if it's doing for startups. Now look at the competition. See, these are the serious issues. What do the Chinese do? CMF, you said. They take when a startup starts up, the military gives the startup orders till commercial viability. How smart? You handhold them. The good startups you handhold till you destroy adversary competition. DeepSeek, 211 authors, 40 from the PLA. 60% haven't stepped out of China. Best and the brightest. Startups को handhold करना है. हम यहाँ startups को वही trial करा रहे हैं. Ambassador Saran said, you have to stop treating them as vendors. They are co-equals. So a good idea in the MOD is perhaps to have a technology business council. Have people like, I'm just suggesting some names, Mr. Amitabh Khan, Ambassador Saran, somebody of stature, who will go through these, because what the bureaucracy needs is somebody to hold their hands. So let the process come, let it go to the technology council, good people, domain specialists, And in that council also put the startups as co-equals. They should sit across. They should sit across. They are no longer breeders and vendors. In that, so a lot of sensible things can be done. And you see one point about this procurement. Our structures were created for a lazy monopsony market. One buyer, one seller, no choices, everybody was having a ball. HL, no competition. I mean, great place to do business. This has to end. And we have to make changes for a technology-driven commercial market. Our procurement cycles are getting tipped by technology cycles. Let me give you an example. So drones today in Ukraine, you fire a drone on Friday, you find it's missing the target. तो वो बताता है साहब ये रॉकेट मोटर में चेंज करना है. You redesign it over the weekend metaphorically. Monday by the different gets back. यहाँ पे वो आएगा, lessons learned, फिर ये वो. I mean, just get common sense back here. You know, there was a time when you could laugh over these things. No longer. You are playing with lives of people. It just cannot be laughed over.
Absolutely. So we have time, we have just about 5 minutes for questions. Absolutely fascinating discussion, and yeah, please raise your hands, identify yourself, keep your questions short. Yes sir, please.
Sir, I am Colonel Rajan Bakshi. I am Director, MET Center for Defense and Strategic Analysis. Sir, like Ambassador Pankaj Saran quoted our Prime Minister mantra, reform, perform and transform. But defense reforms are achievable, but surely need continuation of policy planning, allocation of funds, and especially to R&D, maintaining fine balance between immediate requirement of cutting-edge technology for national defense and long-term incubation period of self-reliance journey. It requires non-negotiable, time-bound, structured plan, and its execution, like it is being done in China, like you have just said. Can I have your candid opinion about, do we really have such well-designed long-term plan which is cutting across political belief, ideology, incorporating private industry and especially academia, or we are moving from one year of reform to another year of reforms? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, my view is, you know, we have enough of plans. Plans is not an issue. For example, this business of strategy, vision, I never understood what is so complicated about it. I'm not saying that's an easy thing, but in 30 days you can roll out a vision or a strategy that's in your head. The point is in action. And here, see, everybody has to be called out. Let's take R&D. The Americans spend $950 billion on science R&D. And as Ambassador Saran was saying, $700 billion come from the private sector. Call out our private sector honchos, not a penny. Now, if you have a vision that doesn't go beyond quarterly profit, India will never be a great power. And what are you talking of private sector participation in defense? You have to put in the money. Everybody. China's $575 billion R&D. Look at what's happened in DeepSeek. What a great example. So the CEO of DeepSeek was given many carrots to come into commerce of AI. It was selling. He stuck to R&D. But what did Jack Ma do? Jack Ma was out of favor with Z. He churns out commercial models of AI to complement DeepSeek, and today you have a roving ecosystem of research and commerce. And it is coming in a communist country. Why are they ideating better than us? This is the question. The point is not why don't you spend on R&D, why don't you see value in R&D? It's so obvious. This is our private sector.